Welcome to TGIS 311, Maps and GIS. This is day 8. I thought I'd start out with a very nice story map link on this first page. Feel free to click it as you download the PowerPoint slide deck, or if you'd like, you can type all that out. But my suggestion is to download the slide deck and click on that link to see the story map. You'll be making a story map in a couple weeks, and this might give you some great inspiration. This week is all about the census and the data from which we download, the data that we download from the census. This is Lab 6, and you're using 2 or 3 different types of census data. As always, the class will begin at 4:35-ish. We'll have the intro, maps of the day if there are any, and then I'll do some demos and some questions, and then people can begin on the lab. Again, there's the link to our GIS points moving video. It's all about how a GIS point is a good reference to where something is, but specifically in the Pacific Northwest, there's a location that has a GPS placed on it, and it's moving about 18 millimeters per year, which is quite a distance if you think about it. 18 millimeters per year, and they explain how it is moving and what causes it. It's a very, very interesting video. In terms of the census, we're just covering the basics. You probably already know what it is and when it's taken and when it's updated. You may not be aware of all the coding. So this number that begins with 53 and is symbolized in different colors for a reason, you'll come across that in a minute. That references a specific area of Washington State. And as we get through this PowerPoint lecture and the demos in class, you'll learn how to pinpoint locations on the map using these codes, and also what the codes are good for to leverage the census. On the right is a map that was created for an art exhibition in Cleveland. The link is provided for your reference. The visualization was made by drawing New York City with 60,000 flags. Each was picked proportionally from the birthplaces of the foreign-born inhabitants of that census tract. And census tracts are something within the census, so that's why it pertains to today. You will download and utilize census tracts in the lab today, or lab on class day, as well as counties. The U.S. Census is comprised of the American Community Survey and the decennial census. And feel free to zoom in on this graphic, or you can wait until the next slide where I copy and paste the details for you to see. Also, the link is provided for you to click and read on your own. Specifically, through the ACS, which you may not have heard of before, the American Community Survey helps us know more about jobs and occupations, educational attainment, veterans, and whether people own or rent their homes, as well as many other topics. The decennial census is quite basic in terms of what it collects. It's a count, and it's a count of people and where they live. These are the differences. I won't read them to you. I know you can read, but feel free to pause and browse through this to get a sense of the differences between the American Community Survey on the left and the decennial census. For example, every month of every year, the ACS collects data, whereas the decennial census collects data every 10 years. So there's some very, very big differences. Back to the census data. This code, or this number, it's 15 characters. It describes an exact specific location in Washington State within the United States of America. And the numbers are broken down, as you likely can guess, listed above with the state, county, census tract, block group, and block. That's how we locate the specific data. And these are broken down. You probably understand state and county level. Census tract you may have not heard of until today, but you can read more about it on the census. The block group is comprised of there are multiple block groups within a census tract, and then there's multiple blocks within a block group. Similarly, there's plenty of census tracts within a county, and then, as you know, many counties within a state. And this is how the data is delineated in the U.S. Census and the American Community Survey. This slide depicts and symbolizes the numbers that make up the state, county, census tract, block group, and block. And again, going to the census and reading the information using the links that were provided will help you understand how a census tract is created, how block group is created, and then how the blocks are created. We will be downloading up to the census tract level for Lab 6 in GIS 311. In further GIS courses, you may go down to the block level, and that gives you much more specific data. Blocks are a lot smaller than block groups, which are a lot smaller than census tracts, which are smaller than counties, and counties are usually smaller than states. I don't think there's a county that's as big as one of our smallest states, but that would be an interesting trivia question. Some warning about the data that we collect from the census. We don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges. So right now, you knowing that the census was taken every 10 years, that's great. You know a little bit, but this week particularly, you're going to learn a lot more about the census, and you're going to be challenged to work with the census data, and that will increase your skill set considerably. And it's a very, very useful skill that you very likely may be using in your project and in future work in GIS, perhaps in your career. Just as a reference, in case you end up working somewhere that has old manuals or old help documents to help you download data, these are old. These are probably 3 to 4 years old. It seems like the census changes every year or so. These are the websites that we used to use. They don't probably work anymore, but feel free to try them if you download the PowerPoint. I just wanted to show you a visual of what they look like and how we used to teach it here at UW Tacoma. But now we have new methods, and pretty much we download all of our data from census.gov rather than those two sites that I had placed in the previous slide. So there's a central place that we go for our data, and there are all new methods. And this year, again, there are new methods, so I had to update all of the directions in the lab. So there may be a couple errors or a couple inconsistencies. That actually helps you grow. Going back to this slide, if you face a challenge, please don't get discouraged. Just contact me and earn those bonus points. But here's where we go to get the census data. And that shouldn't have been for Lab 7 and 8. We're not even going to talk about those until the week following. So some of the first things that you'll do in the lab this week is download a county shapefile that's 1 to 5,000. That's a national shapefile. And then you'll break it down into, you'll select out just Washington, and you'll use that data in your lab. If you get stuck, please feel free to use the compilation document. Take your time, read backwards and forwards, several steps if you get confused, and definitely read carefully. The initial data that you download, you notice it's counties 1 to 500 or 500,000. I'm directing you in the directions to create a folder to hold the data and give it a name that represents the data. So in this case, it's CB for County Boundary File. That's County Boundary 2020 US County 500K. So that's 1 to 500,000. Within that folder, within your raw data, you're going to extract the data that you obtain by clicking here, by the way, and you will end up with 3 files: a shapefile, an ISO XML, and another ISO XML. You won't use these two, but you will use the shapefile. Once you download the data, you're going to have to determine if this is a geographic or projected coordinate system, and then how to utilize the lab's projected coordinate system for all of your data. So you're going to have to fit your data into the proper projection. And you'll start by determining if this is a geographic or projected coordinate system data, and using skills from previous labs. And by the way, I'll get into Excel in just a moment. You're also going to be downloading data. Instead of a shapefile, you're going to download a geodatabase. And the geodatabase will have many files in it, particularly the census tract that you're going to look at. There are 2 ways to download. You can download from the GUI, the Graphic User Interface, or the FTP archive. If you know exactly what you're looking for, you can use the FTP archive. If you're not positive which files you're looking for, you can use the Graphic User Interface. Sometimes in class, when everybody's using the GUI, the Graphic User Interface, the site seems to bog down, which seems interesting because it's only 20 people or so, but sometimes it happens, and I direct people to use the FTP archive. But to start, use the Graphic User Interface. So these Tiger Line geodatabases are specific data that are particularly useful when you're doing an analysis that requires American Community Survey data. You download the geodatabase, and it includes many of the files that are available for your region. And all of the directions are provided in the Lab 6 file. Again, you could download from the FTP, and if you do, you're looking for this, which is Tiger Line Geodatabase 2020 A53, and that's Washington. 53 is Washington, and it's a geodatabase zipped up. And you get a little success, and you know that you've obtained your data. I should mention that Tiger, the word Tiger is an acronym. It stands for Topically Integrated Geographic Encoding and Referencing. Tiger. In addition, you might see some things called another acronym called FIPS or FIPS. That's Federal Information Processing Standards. At one point, I was saying Federal Industrial, but I believe it's information. Federal Information Processing Standards, or industry. That's what I used to think it was, but it's information. If you were to search for tiger in the census, you would get a bunch of locations. So that's not very helpful. So we get into this to find the tiger line geodatabases from census mapping files. And again, you'll create a specific folder. I tell you to save it as Tiger Washington 53 GDB, and you'll have a zip file within there. And then you extract it, and you'll have the blocks, the block groups, census designated places. I've never used that, to be honest with you. Census tract, counties, county subdivisions, and incorporated places or place. In this lab, you're using the census tract that you download in this step. These files that you will be downloading based on these directions, the tiger lines and the cartographic boundary files, those are geographic. Then that is that they are merely the shapes of the counties or the blocks or the census tracts, etc. It doesn't include any demographic information. The demographic information is obtained through separate tables, and then we join the tables to the geographic information. So you've downloaded we've talked about downloading two different geographic files. We now need to think about obtaining our demographic files. And those are called demographic tables. And in the directions, I lead you to where to find the American Community Survey data. And the first process is to start. You'll notice that there are no filters selected. You will be adding filters to narrow down the options of the data to download. There are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of tables, and you have to narrow down your options so you're not scrolling through thousands of tables to find the right table. The first step in the process, again, explained in the directions, is to create filters. So you'll start with a filter that's looking for all counties in Washington. And then you'll apply a filter that states that you want 2020 data. From there, you're going to select housing units and then something called owner-renter tenure. And that tells you if the occupied housing unit is occupied by an owner of that property, that home, or a renter of that property / home. So it seems pretty easy. It's a little bit of a process, and you won't memorize it, of course, just doing one lab. But these directions will serve as a reference for you at a later date, probably, and definitely in later classes if you take additional GIS courses at UW-Tacoma, and perhaps in your job when you need to download demographic data tables from the U.S. Census. Once you narrow down your options, the file that you need will be able to be clicked, and you click that file and then you download it. Once you download it, you'll extract it. Here's the download process. You download the CSV, you'll see it's downloading, it's downloaded, and you're going to download, extract, save it as an XLS or XLXX, depending on how Lab 2 worked for you. You know best what worked with your computer. And notice here that this is the CSV that I started with, and then I did as this little text box explained, I saved it as an XLSX document. So within this document, this is the workbook. There are actually 2 different sheets within this workbook, and you will see those sheets in the upcoming slide. There will be 2 sheets. The first sheet is the one that comes with the data, and that includes hundreds of columns and just, I believe, 39 rows of data. You notice that this data sheet has 2 header rows, which isn't very helpful for GIS. In fact, it will break GIS if you have 2 header rows. So you need to eventually get rid of one of these rows. And then you'll have the second sheet. And in the second sheet, you'll use these codes and the descriptive information in row 2 to find the total number of occupied homes within each county. And then separate from that, those that are owner occupied and those that are renter occupied. And the numbers should, if you've done this properly, these 2 numbers will add up to the total occupied. And to find a percentage, you would divide the owner occupied divided by the total occupied to determine the percentage of homes in Adams County that are owner occupied. Conversely, you could do it with renter occupied. You would divide renter by total occupied either in a field, an additional field, or you can do it through the symbology of ArcGIS. So you're going to have one very well formatted sheet within your Excel document, and then you'll have one of the original data. And that allows you to keep the descriptive line that tells you what all of these silly codes are at the very top. We will go through and change the header row to make it much more clear when you're using the data within ArcPro. From there, you'll import that data into the geodatabase and open it. And then, as mentioned earlier, you're going to have to join this data to the shapes that you downloaded, the county shapes. This side-by-side view is helpful to find the join fields. That you notice that this isn't an Excel table anymore. This is now named something different, and it is saved in my geodatabase. So I brought it into one map, the sandbox, I believe, and then I exported it to the geodatabase and then opened that file. Remember to do an attribute join. You need a specific field to join the data. It doesn't have to be in the same order. It just has to have the same number of characters, and there has to be some sort of match. So open these up in side-by-side view will help you determine what the join fields are, and then you can complete the join. And you've done the join previously in at least one lab in lab 2. Feel free to look back at those directions if you need assistance, or if you can remember how to do the join, that's great. Just complete your join and remember the extra step that is necessary. To give you a visual of the census geographic data, I thought I'd give you a little heads up here before I do the demo in class. Counties are this pinkish color or purple. This 053 is all of the purple that you can see, and then even more. And right now purple is being 053, that's Pierce County. So obviously that's much larger than this area. From there, it's get broken down to census tract. And right now, this entire bluish and yellow area is a census tract, the red as well. And then within that, there are block groups. And we have selected one block group out of the census tract that was selected out of the county, which of course was selected out of the state, which is 53. We'll go over this in detail in the live demo. From there, the smallest enumeration is the block, and that is this red area right here. So a block is part of a block group, which is part of a census tract, which is part of the county, which is part of the state. And you could perhaps consider the whole state the entire window that you're looking at here, when in fact it's definitely a lot larger. This slide has a view of those same enumeration units going back. Again, there's red, yellow, blue, purple, and gray. So here we have red, which are the smallest, yellow, blue, purple, the counties that you probably recognize at this point, and then the state. This gray line is the state of 53. Pierce County right here, of which Tacoma is a part, is also 53. It's just designated with a 0 because some states have over 100 counties. So they give it a 0 so that it's consistent. So we're 053 here in Pierce County. It's important to note that there isn't a designation of city. Census data isn't broken down by city. It's only broken down by block group, block, census tract, county, and state. And that sums up this pretty short lecture on the census. When you're in class, please remember to sign off and out of the computer, restart it, and bring your name tent up front. I have been placing your name tent cards around the room because I can remember where you sit, but sometimes when I'm doing demos and trying to think on my feet, I space on your name. So I still keep them there as a reference, but usually before class, I'm placing them out where I believe you're sitting. It helps me remember your names. And that is the end of Day 8 lecture. I'll be there until 8:30 or when the last person leaves. Sometimes I do stay till 9 or 9:30, and I should be able to do so this week, but it always varies week by week. But I'll definitely be there until the end of class time. And I encourage you to show up to class, especially if your grade isn't exactly where you like it. You notice we're on Day 8 or week 8 out of 10. There's only 2 more weeks after this, 9 and 10. And there are 2 more labs to be completed, Lab 7 and 8. Both of those will be assigned next week. They're much shorter labs, particularly Lab 8 is super short. And all of the labs need to be finished by the last class day at midnight. I believe that's June 5th for spring quarter. I'm not sure for summer and autumn quarter coming up. So that wraps up Day 8. I look forward to seeing you in class. I have some great demos prepared to show you how to collect data and how these enumeration units are broken down. And of course, you're welcome to ask any questions. If you have time, you may want to get a start on Lab 6. The directions have been posted. The data for Lab 6 is all downloadable from the census. You'll download all the data yourself this week, which is an interesting accomplishment. We're getting to the point where most of your data can be downloaded online, and it is in fact this week. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing all of you in class. Feel free to come with questions. I'm happy to answer them. And of course, use the discussion boards and email me if you have any questions. I'll see you in class.